Welcome to the Voices of History, part of the Oral History Project in the Ismaili Special Collections at the Institute of Ismaili Studies. In this episode, coordinator for the Oral History Project Rizwan Karim sits with Professor Farouk Topan, a pioneer in Swahili literature studies and one of the founding members of the Institute of Ismaili Studies here in London. Professor Topan shares his experiences growing up in Zanzibar, the Takhnashini in Tanzania, and the early days of the Institute of Ismaili Studies. But our story today starts with his grandfather, Sir Tarya Topan.
Tell us something about your grandfather, Sir Tarya Topan.
Well, my grandfather came to Zanzibar a long time ago. That was in around 1836.
Right.
Around that time, 1836 or 1838.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a businessman. He developed into a businessman.
Right.
And he had an extensive business, what would I call it? I can't call it, I know that you call it empire, but it was quite extensive.
Wow,
in the sense that it went this side right in the west to America,
mm-hmm.
to the east coast of America.
Right.
And this way it went, of course, to India and then beyond India.
Right.
Into the other areas. So he had quite an extensive business, and by the time he died, he had become quite an entrepreneur. He was quite well known.
Mm-hmm.
And then because of his activities in
mm-hmm.
terms of both, he was close to the Sultan
right.
of Zanzibar, Said Barghash.
Barghash.
And he was knighted because he had assisted in the abolition of slavery.
Right.
So he was knighted when he had gone back to Bombay. He came from Bombay.
Okay.
And then, or from Kutch, in fact.
From Kutch initially, right.
And then he went back and settled back in Bombay. That's where he died.
Right.
So he died in Bombay. So he was quite a well-known figure who also played in quite a significant role in the Jamaat.
Right.
Both in Zanzibar and I think also in Bombay.
And that's how he broadened the base of his business, and that's how he brought in Ismailis, other Ismaili families as well.
Yes, he helped
them come in.
Families also come.
Right.
Because Zanzibar at that time and Mombasa to the north,
mm-hmm.
These two were like springboards
right.
for Ismailis to go in onto the mainland.
Right.
So some would come, settle in Zanzibar, settle in Mombasa,
right.
but then they would also go inland into what is now mainland Tanzania
mm-hmm.
and also in mainland Kenya
right.
at that time. So there were these pioneers. In Mombasa you had Ali Dina Visram, I think just after my grandfather's initial, I think, settlement.
Right.
And you had other pioneers as well. We call them nowadays as Ismaili pioneers,
right.
because they're in history as such. Yes.
Right. So that's where the community started, and there are publications, there research work has been done, which tells that. That's how it started for Ismailis in Zanzibar and Africa at large, in fact. That's where they started moving
yes.
from India to
yes.
Zanzibar, and from there on they moved...
yes, so you have Zanzibar and then Mombasa on the other side. And you had also had other communities,
right.
Shia communities, the
right.
Bahoras,
right.
for instance. They also came quite... and the Nashiris... The Ishnashri the split came later on,
right.
in the early 20th century. Though of course it started in a small way from a bit earlier than that.
Right.
So you had, but there were other type of Shias which mm-hmm. were from Persia.
Right.
What we call them the Ajamis.
Yes,
right. Yes, who were there as well. So we had that Zanzibar was very cosmopolitan,
mm-hmm.
very cosmopolitan, because by the nature of its position, geographically. So it had quite attractions of people from various parts of not only Africa but also across the Indian Ocean.
Right.
Okay, and also along the East African coast, because you had from the Comoros people come to settle in Zanzibar, and the north from Mombasa, from Lamu, so like that. And of course Zanzibar, under the Sultanate, became a very important center of Muslim learning.
Right.
Okay, and then that really then became quite a force, in terms of knowledge, and the scholars who came to Zanzibar to actually learn. And also Zanzibar scholars went to Arabia, southern, especially the Yemen, and so you had also who got the Idafa, that is the certificates from there, and then came back to Zanzibar to start their own. Yes, Rizwan, it's not just the Ismaili community; it is Zanzibar, which was really quite advanced in its thinking, because when you have a people who are cosmopolitan, who have good education, who have the minds are so broad. I mean, it's not that we didn't have narrow-minded people. Of course, we had, but there was this, and it was colonial education. Now, colonial education may be bad in one respect, but it was also good in another respect, because it introduces you to a larger picture right from childhood. So in that sense, it was quite. And there were other youth. I was a member. I was under secretary of the Young Muslim League, which was an association outside of
the Ismaili
community.
Muslims at large.
I was honorary secretary of that.
So I think that brings me to. I was about to ask, what was the situation outside the community? How was it overall, from political to gender and all that?
Yes. So let me perhaps draw a dividing line to answer your question. There are two dividing lines. There's the dividing line of, let us say, around 1955-56, and another in 1964.
Yeah.
So up to 1955-56, the relationship between communities was excellent.
Right.
So that there were, if you like, ethnic communities who had their own spaces.
Yeah.
Like the Ismailis of the Jamaat Khana, the Nashri Mosque, and you have the Bohra Mosque, you have all these masjids, etc., Hindu, these temples, you had the Parsis had theirs as well, So each one of the Asian communities, and then Europeans also have their English club,
churches,
they called it the English clubs, etc. So there was this, but it was a sort of, if I may call it, a clockwork sort of vision.
Right.
Where you see all these cogs sort of working in a clockwork, but the clock moves.
Yes, the society at large was moving.
It was moving. You see, although there were these, each one with its own. And during Diwali, people would send greetings to one another. During Eid, you send dishes even, we went to another. Okay. So there was a lot of that. Then came politics.
Right.
So political sort of awakening, consciousness, etc. Now the organization I told you about, the Young Muslim League, was totally educational.
Right.
It had nothing to do with politics.
Right.
But 1956 onwards, there was then another youth's own union or something like that, which then became the part of a political party.
Right.
And that sucked in all the other youths there, etc. And then it changed.
Right.
The whole atmosphere then started becoming Africans against Arabs, all these things. And then this culminated in the second line which I'm drawing, which is the 1964 revolution. And then, of course, things became totally different.
Right.
And then there was really no freedom then by then, and then the one-party state, etc., etc.
Right.
So that's another story altogether. But to answer your question, there was harmony.
Right.
There was harmony.
One of Professor Topan's most cherished memories is his participation in the Takht Nashini in 1957. This ceremony marks the ascension of His Highness Prince Karim Aga Khan to the Ismaili Imamate.
Jafri Dala Qasim, marhum, came to me and told me, we will go to Dar es Salaam, for the Takht Nashini.
Yeah.
But I want you to do these. These are the verses I want you to memorize.
Ah, okay.
To memorize.
Right.
Okay. And so I just followed his instructions. I memorized those verses. Went to Dar es Salaam, and I didn't know anybody in Dar es Salaam. And of course, it was a huge occasion with Ismailis from all over
the world.
All over, first of all over Tanganyika and Zanzibar.
Yeah.
And then also some, although they were going to have another ceremony in Nairobi,
yes.
they came also.
Yes.
And so, because this was the first one.
Yes,
No,
clearly. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the next day, which was the 18th of October, Jafri said, you come with me. So we went to Upanga, where this particular ceremony was going to be.
Okay.
And there, it was a very informal sort of, it was not like it was a programmed, scheduled, etc. From my point of view, I was just 14 years old. At that time, I was 16 going on to 17. I just thought it was just people standing around, actually. And actually, it was Hazrima, Prince Ali, Saribu, Michael Curtis, Tejpar, who was the president of the council in either Dar es Salaam or Tanganyika, one of the two, and Jafri Dala Qasim.
Right.
Okay, and missionaries. So it was Abu Ali, I think it was Sufi. There was a missionary called Missionary Sufi, Qadr Ali, and I don't know who the others are because I forget. And the stage was there ready to be used the next day. Now, on one of the platforms, there were two mics. There was a mic on the lower platform, and then there was the mic where Hazimam was, on the gadi, in front of him, so that he would use that.
Right.
All the others would use the lower one, one step lower.
Right.
And so you were just standing in front of that microphone. Okay?
Yeah.
And one by one, the missionaries went onto the mic and they recited Surah Al-Fatiha.
Right.
Okay, and then each one of them.
Right.
And then I went last. Okay, and then we all told to wait. And then there was a man called Dosa, I think, Mr. Dosa. And he said, Azimam wants to see you. So he went just there in the ground. Wow. So he came and he put his hand on my shoulder. And he told me that I would like you to recite tomorrow, but you need to do two things. One is get a copy of the Quran and hold it.
Right.
Okay? And the second thing is that come closer to the mic.
Okay.
This is advice I've been getting all throughout my life. Come closer to the mic, because my voice is soft. And now, Jafri Dala Qasim, he had made not only got me to memorize these verses, but he also got me to do a sherwani.
Ah, okay.
And a pagri. So I had that sherwani, white, and a pagri. And so I had to wear that the next day.
Right.
And so now, then there's a little funny story here because they let me go. So I went back to my dormitory and they told me you'll be here by, let us say if it is 3 o'clock, the next 4 o'clock, they told me to come here by 2 o'clock, something like that.
Right.
But then they began to panic because when now all the people are coming in from even before lunch time and everywhere, and where is this boy? So they started announcing.
Wow.
Farouk Topan, could he come to the days? Farouk Topan, could he come to the days? And I was going to keep to my time, right? In fact, I didn't even have a watch. I borrowed a watch from a friend of mine. and so by the time I went there, the announcements had already been made about repeatedly. So there was this girl guide, on the carpet there on the way. You had this station, like volunteers.
Yes, on duty.
Girl guide.
Yeah.
So I went to her. I said, have they announced for Farouk Topan? He said, yes. Where is he? I said, it's me. She said, it's you. She couldn't believe it. That was her immediate reaction. It's you. Because this young man with Bagri and Sherwani and this book, holding this book. But anyway, I went and then alhamdulillah, things went all right. And I had to recite wait for, of course, when the Imam comes, he sits on Hazimam sat on the chair. But now everybody's seated then. Once he sits, everybody sits. Then I go. Now in Dar es Salaam, this was easy.
Right.
Because the ceremony was, the master of ceremonies was a man called Count, it was, I think it was Wazir at the time, Wazir Nazrali, VM Nazrali.
Right.
Or Count VM Nazrali, perhaps. VM Nazrali. And his son used to be the executive officer of the AKF here in London.
Right.
So I was by his side, so there was no problem. So once Hazimam sat down, I went just, as I told you, it was a lower. So I just got on it. Hazimam stood up and everybody stood up for Surah Al-Fatiha. And then I paused when I come to Al-Adalin and everybody, Hazimam sits down, then everybody sits down, which was good.
Right.
Then after the ceremony was over, then the secretary of the, I think at that time it was called either Federal Council of Supreme, he came to me, Mr. Doss. He said, Hazimam wants you to recite also in Nairobi and in Uganda, in Kampala.
Wow.
Yeah, so alhamdulillah. And you'll go with the entourage.
Right.
So we all went into in those days, it was this walk of friendship, these small planes. So we went in there, and Hazimam used to, he sat at the back because he would be the first one to come out.
Right.
And I stayed with Saribu at Saribu's place during those times. And there, Nairobi was a challenge for me because the stage was huge. You see, in the sense that it was high.
Right.
Okay, it was I think almost 1.5 times higher than the one in Dar es Salaam. This meant that the the first row had to be quite a way back,
Right.
in order for the people on the first row
To see
where,
yeah.
Yeah.
The stage.
And I was given a seat because they knew I was going to recite. I was given a seat in the third row,
Right.
not the aisle, the very first seat.
Mm-hmm.
So which that means once the Imam has walked on that carpet and ascended on those steps, and he had sat down, okay, it is quite a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now then I had to get up, get onto that carpet and walk. You can't run.
No.
You have to walk in a very paced way,
Yeah.
and then climb the dais to that microphone.
Yeah.
And I had to do it. So I did it, and I was there. I looked at him. He got up. He nods. I start, and then that's fine. Then going back, it's fine. I can do it my own way. But that going at that time to that was very okay. So that was Nairobi.
Yeah.
Professor Topan followed the entourage, reciting Quranic verses at other ceremonies across East Africa. But this is just one example of Professor Topan's service to the Imam.
You are Dr. Farouk Topan now. And what are the plans? Where are you going? You've just finished your PhD. Walk me through it.
Well, I had, at that time, there was a degree called BA English and Linguistics, BA French and Linguistics.
Right.
So he and I had BA Swahili and Linguistics in 1969.
Wow.
But a year before that, when I was there, I introduced the teaching of Swahili literature in Swahili.
Right, for the first time.
For the first time, yes.
Wow.
And that was my real joy, to have all these young men and women around the table like this, and about 12 or so of them, and we were, and that was wonderful. So we had that, and then 1969 BA Swahili, so 1968 Swahili literature, 69 BA Swahili in linguistics. 70, the university was breaking up.
Right.
It was then the University of East Africa. Now it was becoming national universities.
Right.
So it was University of Dar es Salaam, University of Nairobi, and Makerere University.
Right.
So now it was going to be independent with their own chancellor, etc.,
Right.
etc. Now, in that process, moving up to 1970, July, when this would happen, Muhammad Abdulaziz and I and another colleague called George Mahina, we had written a paper after being advised by the chancellor or the vice chancellor that we should do this. So we did a paper which went right through from the faculty board to the academic board to the Senate and to the government, that there should be established the Department of Swahili.
Right.
Because there was no Department of Swahili.
Yeah.
Okay. And it had been sort of tacitly agreed that Muhammad Abdulaziz, my friend, and he would be the head of the department.
Right.
And then there was another institution called the Institute of Swahili Research.
Right.
And that would be headed by George Mahina. He was very keen to head that.
Right.
So I wasn't. I was going to be with Muhammad Abdulaziz in
the linguistics.
in the Department of Swahili.
Yeah.
But Muhammad Abdulaziz was a Kenyan, or is a Kenyan.
Yeah.
And the same thing was happening in Nairobi.
Right.
In Kenya. So he decided then he would rather go there.
Okay.
And he became head there.
Right.
So by default, I became head of the
Swahili.
Swahili, the first head of the Department of Swahili in Dar es Salaam, 1970. And we had a huge influx of students that year who wanted to do Swahili, because the president of the country, Nyerere, had been really promoting Swahili as a unifying force, etc., against tribalism, etc.
Right.
So it had quite a momentum. And so you had this, all students coming, and quite a few of that cohort actually then became professors later on.
Right.
In their own right.
Wow.
Yeah, in their own right, yes,
Wow.
yes. And so that was 1970.
Right.
And then 1971 I came back here to England and I finished my degree.
Right.
And then after that, one day there was just an urge in me that I wanted to learn Arabic.
Right.
I found an advertisement that there is the University of Riyadh. They wanted an English literature teacher, an English language teacher, at the university level.
Right.
So I thought I'll apply for it and see if I get it. I was interviewed here in London because my family was in England.
Right. Okay.
So I said, look, let me tell you why I want to come to
Riyadh
because I want to study, to learn
Arabic.
actually studying Arabic in its environment, in an Arabic-speaking country.
Yeah.
And he said, then come to Riyadh, because Riyadh we have Ali,
Right.
which is ALI, Arabic Learning Institute,
Uh-huh.
specifically for foreign learners.
Right.
You see, so I said, well, fine. So that's where I went. And that is, I was there 74, 75. 75, 76, I was in England.
Right.
76 when I was there. When I had come here in 1976, that I came to know that there will be an institute
Right.
of Ismaili Studies.
Right.
Okay. And I was told to apply. Said that why don't you apply? I applied while I was here, 1976 vacation.
Right.
Okay. 1977.
Okay.
So
After spending a year.
I was here. Then I went back to Saudi Arabia while my application was being considered.
Right.
And then I got a phone call from my wife. And in those days, phone calls, you had to go to a special booth to do trunk calls.
Yeah.
Amir Bhatia would like to speak with you.
Right.
So I went there, and he and I spoke. And I said, yes, of course, I'm glad to hear your application has been accepted by the board, and you can start.
Right.
So I said, okay, then I'll start next year, which will be 78.
Okay.
Because now I was already 77 with the
University of Riyadh.
University of Riyadh. And he said, no, you come now from the ground floor. So we are together from the ground floor.
Right.
So that was in October 1977. And that was the start of 16 years with the IIS.
Right.
Whereabouts was this first institute? Where was it in London? Where were the offices?
And the first offices were in 52 High Holborn.
Right.
Third floor suite.
Right.
And we had 2 rooms and a big room, which we then created into a library. By then, Dr. Jalal Badakhshani joined us after the Iranian Revolution of 1979. April, he came.
Right.
We also had Mr. and Mrs. Haji, Amin Haji and his wife, who has passed on. May God rest her soul in peace. Zebunisa. She was the librarian.
Right.
And he taught Arabic to the first group.
Right.
And
so when was the first group recruited? When did the first group of students?
In February 1980.
80. Okay.
80.
Right.
And they were there right up to February. They came, I think, because I think we started in February.
Right.
And they came and they finished in July of 1983.
It was a 2 years program.
3
years. Yeah, 80 to 83. Right.
Almost 3.5, almost.
Right.
And it was a very, I can say this had my hand on my heart,
Mm-hmm.
it was a very, very thorough program,
Right.
because there were two, what was called core parts,
Mm-hmm.
core program part 1 and core program part 2,
Two.
which was all Ismailis,
Right.
Ismailism.
Wow.
You know, so you went thoroughly into it. Not that it was divorced from or separated from
the bigger picture.
Bigger picture. No, it wasn't.
Right.
And you had wonderful lecturers who
Right.
came to teach the first program.
Right.
You had Abbas Hamdani, you had Mohsin Mahdi from where you have. There's the Mohsin Mahdi had Al-Nur Danani with him, who came also. Al-Nur? He came to teach at the. We were all young in those days. And you had Samad Lung, you had Anne-Marie Schimmel, who all came.
Legends, all of you.
Dr. Darish Shaygan, who used to. We had a coterie of these listeners. And we also we were very, very fortunate one day to have had the visit of the late Asif Faizi.
Mm-hmm.
He came actually, he was very old by then.
Right.
Faizi came to the institute, and he was and the first, if you like, young PhD person was Bowring.
Right.
Professor Bowring. He's a German, I think, scholar, but I think he's in the United States, who came and did. So we used to have these public lectures.
Right.
As it were.
What was the curriculum like?
Oh, the curriculum, you had two, as I said, core courses.
Yeah.
And it had history.
Mm-hmm.
So we had Abbas Hamdani, we had then Morris, who came to talk about doctrines, etc. So we had like that. And if you can remind me, and again, I'm not going to leave it with you, and that is the prospectus.
Right.
Of that, it's a little green book, and I think that was our very first publication of the Institute.
Wow.
Yes, because what else would you call it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Clearly. It's a little green and there we had given an outline of all the
courses that you were offering. Right.
On the Quran, on the Hadith.
Right.
So, and I believe, as I said in my retirement event, that the comments which we received then, later on the preschool series, which I was in charge, those were the foundation of the whole Ta'lim series.
Exactly.
You see, because as Imam really gave guidance on a very, very, on the principles of that. Later on, it became then the topics or the range of topics, but that was,
right.
It was very, very important.
Right.
But the curriculum you asked was this 3.5 years. Now, in those 3.5 years, they had to go to an Arab country. Or for
language immersion.
And they went to Amman.
Okay.
And I had to go there to prepare for this.
Jordan University.
Jordan, and that was the guidance from Maulana Hazimah.
Right.
That he wanted the group to go to Amman. Okay, so we went and we were well received, and they enjoyed themselves there, and we had a very good. So that was Arabic. So that was, and it was Mr. Haji who taught them.
Right.
Single-handedly every day he would be teaching them. The second, of course, was the core curriculum, which was, and then the third was education. So some went and got MAs from the university, some got diplomas, and some got certificates from the Institute of Education. So those prongs, if you like, which have in a sense continued into GPISH.
Yes, I was about to say the same, that we have gone through more or less the same. Some language and broad social sciences with Ismaili studies.
Yes.
Although it has changed, syllabus, curriculum has changed, of course.
Yes.
With the third year.
Yes, I was involved in doing the GPISH, the very first one, because with Farouk Mita and Dr. Daftari and Aziz Ismail.
Right.
And then I left the year GPISH started.
Okay, and what year was this?
1993.
93, okay.
I left, but we had prepared the curriculum up to that point.
Right.
Right. Farouk, you know Farouk Mita.
Yes, he's around these days.
Yes, I saw him the other day. He would be a very good candidate later on for your interview.
Yeah.
And
sure.
So he and I and Farhad Daftari, and then Aziz would also look at it, etc. And so that was the link, if you
right.
The transition.
Yeah, shift from.
But even before it had shifted, it had
for sure. Yeah, it must have gone through different.
Yes, because the first one was called Wise-in and Teacher Training Program.
Right.
Then it came to be called Wise-in and Teacher Education Program. And then some of the students from that group then also took a McGill course at the same time.
Okay.
So they had, in a sense, two qualifications.
Right.
So they went on to do their second year in McGill.
Right.
Because by then we had Herman Landolt is the dean, and then he negotiated with McGill because he was from there anyway.
Right.
So so we had this arrangement. So we had arrangement with the University of London, Institute of Education, and then we had with McGill.
Right. Right.
That that was the.
Since then, hundreds of students from dozens of countries around the world have studied at the Institute of Ismaili Studies. It is just as much a melting pot today as the Zanzibar of Professor Topan's youth. The graduate program in Islamic Studies and Humanities and the International Wise-in Training Program both continue the courses of study that Dr. Topan helped to establish in the 1970s. After an illustrious academic career, helping to found the field of Swahili literature studies in East Africa and the Institute of Ismaili Studies here in London, and more recently becoming a professor emeritus at the Aga Khan University, Professor Topan is now retired.
And now, at last, having retired, I'm going to be doing the reverse of many academics do, and I'm going to publish my thesis.
Okay, wow.
after retiring. Because my thesis was on songs.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned it to you earlier.
Yes.
You see, so there's publication of my thesis, which I would like to do.
Yeah.
Perhaps another book or whatever later on Swahili, either culture, whatever. And then continue with my fiction.
Yeah.
And then also do perhaps something on Ismaili Tariqa, perhaps some reflections.
Sure. Yeah.
During my life.
The Oral History Project at the Institute of Ismaili Studies seeks to record and preserve the experiences, lives, and stories of Ismailis from around the world in their own voices. If you have a story you would like to share, please reach out to the Oral History Coordinator Rizwan Karim at rkarim@iis.ac.uk. This episode of Voices of History was made possible by Rizwan Karim, Coordinator for the Oral History Project, and Wafi Momin, Head of the Ismaili Special Collections Unit. And a special thank you to Professor Farouk Topan for allowing us to share his story today. Thank you for listening, and Khudafis.